So in this lesson, we're going to look at the t-formula. Now, the t-formula is just a substitution that we use in maths. And so it's a substitution that helps us solve trigonometric problems. And it's a very clear substitution what we do. And you can see it here. So this is our substitution. We're going to let t equal tan of a half theta. So with that, we can use this double angle formula to get what tan theta is. So what's tan theta? Well, in actual fact, tan theta will be double the angle that half theta will be. So all we're going to do is use the same formula here. So it's going to be 2 tan half theta over 1 minus tan squared. That should be theta there. Half theta. Now, because we have this substitution here, I can just go 2t 1 minus t squared because t equals half. So that's what tan theta is. But what does sine and cos theta equal? We need to go through a little bit more of a process with that. So with sine theta will be, the double angle formula will be 2 sine half theta cos half theta. Okay. Now I'm going to do some manipulation. So I'm going to put this all over 1. So I'm not changing it at all, except I'm going to use a trigonometric one, which, let's see if you remember, cos half theta, cos squared half theta plus sine squared half theta. Okay. So all I've done is put it over 1, so I haven't changed anything. And hopefully you know that this trigonometric identity is equal to 1. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide top and bottom by cos squared half theta. Okay? So you need to follow carefully what I'm doing. So the top, I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So 2 sine half theta over cos half theta over cos squared half theta. So that's my first division. And then the second one, I'm going to put it over cos squared half theta. Okay. And what happens is that I can start cancelling stuff out. I can go cos theta, I can take one of the coses down there. And then I'm left with just 2. And what's sine over cos? It's tan. In this case, cos squared half theta over cos squared half theta will just equal 1. And this will equal tan theta. So hopefully you're following through. So that equals 2 tan half theta over 1 plus tan squared half theta. So that means, and I'm just going to write it here, that sine theta equals 2t over 1 plus t squared. Now, what will cos theta be? Well, we're going to have to do the same thing, except our double angle identity will be cos squared half theta minus sine squared half theta. Okay? And I'm going to divide that by 1 as well, but our trigonometric one. So I'm going to go half theta plus sine squared half theta. And I'm also going to divide top and bottom by cos squared theta. So I'm going to go straight into it. So that means the top will be 1 minus tan squared half theta, because sine over cos is tan. So I'm using exactly what we did this. And at the bottom, it's going to be 1 plus sine squared half theta. And so if I use my t substitution, it will be 1, which is there, minus t squared over 1 plus t squared. That should be tan here. All right, so obviously I made a mistake. All right, now the good news is that this is all in your formula sheet, and here it is, okay? But what I just showed you there is the why, how we get there, okay? Now, the syllabus is clear that we have to derive them. So that's how we derive them. It's just a little bit of algebra, and it's remembering that when we divide by 1 with a trigonometric equation or expression, it's cos squared half theta plus sine squared half theta, which is our Pythagorean identity. I'm going to use one example here to do, so I'm splitting my page in half. And this example is a proof. So proofs have a certain way of laying it out. Now, normally we start with a left-hand side equals or right-hand side equals. In this case, I'm going to do my left-hand side equals. So I'm going to go left-hand side equals, and it equals that. So I'm going to go 1 minus cos theta over 1 plus cos theta. Now, the question has asked me to use the t formula. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to replace cos theta with my t formula 1 there. So I'm going to go 1 minus t squared over 1 plus t squared. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to split the top and the bottom and put an old school divide by symbol. So I'm going to go 1 minus, and it was 1 minus t squared over 1 plus t squared, divided by, so that's just this line here. And then I'm going to go 1 plus, and it's going to be the same thing, 1 minus t squared over 1 plus t squared. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use equivalent fractions to change this 1 to having that in the denominator. So hopefully you're following along. If not, please ask questions. 1 plus t squared over 1 plus t squared is actually just 1, isn't it? Because it's the same thing at the top and the same thing at the bottom. Minus, and I'm going to go 1 plus t squared. So I'm just putting that in now. 1 minus t squared. Now I'm going to put a bracket around there, and hopefully you can see why. And I'm going to do the same with the second one. So I'm going to go 1 plus t squared, 1 plus t squared, which is just 1, plus 1 minus t squared over 1 plus t squared. And now I'm going to combine the fractions. And because we have the same denominator now, I can just leave it all over that denominator and add or subtract the top. So that's going to be 1 plus t squared. So it's going to be 1 minus 1, which is 0. So we don't have to do that. And then I go t squared minus minus. So that means plus t squared. So I've got 2t squared at the top. And that's going to be divided by, let's do the next one, 1 plus 1. So that's going to be 2. And it's going to be over the same thing, t squared. And let's keep going. T squared plus minus t squared. So that means it's just going to be 2. All right. Now, because we're dividing, I'm going to times it, and I'm going to flip it over. So I'm going to go 2 squared plus 1 plus t squared times 1 plus t squared over 2. And now I'm going to grab my pen and start cancelling things out. So I can cancel that with that, and I can cancel that with that. And so all I'm left with is just t squared. But what is t? T is tan half theta. So that will equal tan squared half theta. And that is what we require, which equals right-hand side which is this thing here, as required. All right, hopefully that makes sense. Peace out.